She tells me Iman Khalif won Olympic gold in 2024, but was banned by her own sports body last year, told she had to undergo a controversial genetic test to confirm she is eligible to compete in women's boxing. Now she tells me she is willing to do that, but only if the IOC run it.
أكيد أنا شخصيا عندي ثقة كبيرة في اللجنة الأولمبية، وهي هي الهيئة الكبرى اللي لازم تفصل في هذا الموضوع. أكيد أني نقبل أني نعمل أي شيء يتوجب عليا باش نكون ضمن المشاركين، ولكن كذلك من آذوش النساء بحماية النساء.
If you spend enough time watching plants, animals, and human beings, something begins to stand out that is obvious and is strangely mysterious. Life does not simply exist. Life organizes itself. It separates, it specializes, it divides labor, it creates contrast. And one of the oldest contrasts, so old it predates nearly every story we tell ourselves, it contrasts we call male and female. Now in my book, titled Compared to What? The Characteristics Between Plants, Animals, and Humans, I explored this through the lens of dimorphism. That's a new word for you. It might be an old word for others. That remarkable pattern where nature marks differences in forms, appearance, behavior, and somewhat signaling. It's just not to create a hierarchy or anything like that. No. But to create clarity, not to create hatred, but to create recognition. Because in nature, recognition is everything. You don't have time to write essays in the wild. You don't have time to negotiate what something means. You don't need signals that work fast. So dimorphism becomes one of nature's oldest languages. It is a biological shorthand. It says, in effect, here is what you're looking at. Here is how you should respond. Here is the activity. But then nature reveals a second truth, second one, that makes the first one even more interesting, people. Nature doesn't only create signals, nature only creates strategies around those signals. And this is where we get those astonishing cases you described, right? Like the Marsh Harrier example, where a male can appear as a female in another male's territory and causes confusion. I wrote about that. The territory holder, they hesitate because the usual aggressive response is interrupted by uncertainty. Is that a rival or is that a mate? And while the defender pauses inside of the confusion, the disguised male can mate without having to fight for the territory. Now, before anyone gets uncomfortable, notice what it's actually showing us. It is not only showing us deception as evil, it is showing us something much older. Life is a game of moves. Nature is not a courtroom. Nature is not moral philosophy. Nature is not improvisation. It's not that. Life adapts, life experiments, life uses existing rules and sometimes bends them. So dimorphism is not merely difference. It's not. Dimorphism is communication system. And once you have communication systems, you also have possibility of mimicry, camouflage, performance, and that thing called strategy. So I'm not trying to be harsh. That's not insulting. That's not cynical. That's simply how signaling works everywhere, even in human society. Because humans are also signal readers. We read voice, we read posture, we read face, the clothing, the confidence, the vulnerability, the strength, the softness, the fertility cues. We read protection cues, we read it all. And what is it? Identity. And in many ways, except the patterns of signals, we learn to send and interpret. We learn to send and interpret. So when you ask me, why do we have these identities as beings in the first place, male and female? We're really asking a deeper question. Why does life create polarity? And the best answer is not political, it's not angry, it's not ideological. The best answer is because polarity creates motion. If everything were the same, nothing would move toward anything. No attraction, pursuit, pairing, tension, release, and no dancing. Nature creates male and female not as two enemies, but as two complementary roles that's been around since the ancient process, reproduction, yes, but also evolution itself. Because evolution depends on variation, and variation depends on difference, and different depends on contrast, male and female. At the biological level, but male and female are part of the mechanism by which life reinvents, or is, I should say, reinventing itself generation after generation without becoming stagnant. Now, the part people miss is this. Those categories are real and ancient, but they're not the whole of reality. Because while nature is very clear in its broad patterns, it is also endlessly creative in its details. So you can affirm the basic pattern, male and female, as a foundational reproductive polarity without pretending that life is simple or every organism, every behavior, expression fits nearly into a box to make you comfortable. And that's what we see with that video, comfortable. People want to feel comfortable. They don't want to question anything. And when you look at identity this way, you stop treating it like a modern argument and you start seeing it like what it really is. A negotiation between biology, environment, culture, strategy, and meaning. In animals, much of identity is assigned by biology and expressed through instinct and signal. In humans, identity becomes more complex. You know how we roll. Because we add language, stories, self-awareness, and all the social systems that we have. We don't just are. We interpret what we are. And interpretation is powerful. It can harmonize our society, or it can fracture it. Create stable families, or create endless confusion. Give people meaning, or turn life into a constant performance. So here's the careful way to speak about this without being offensive, without being harsh, without being insulting, without insulting someone's identity. Biological sex exists, and one of nature's oldest organizing principles, primarily tied to reproduction and the signals that make reproduction possible, that principle shapes much of our psychology, our attraction patterns, our social roles across time. But human beings do not live in biology alone. We live in symbols, expectations, trauma, aspirations, imitations, and culture. We exaggerate roles, soften them, resist them, reinterpret them. And when a society becomes extremely complex, identity becomes not just what you are, but what you mean. That's why conversations become heated. People aren't only debating bodies, they're debating meaning, status, safety, and belonging. And that's also why the Marsh Harry example is so valuable, not as a weapon, but as a mirror. It shows that nature itself contains both a stable signaling system, dimorphism, and number two, a creative disruption of the signaling system, mimicry, and strategy. So the mature mind doesn't panic at complexity. We don't. We simply learn clearly. If you want society to be stable, you need shared signals and shared expectations. If you want individuals to be humane, you need compassion, patience, and the ability to speak without cruelty. And so the real point of my work, what I wanted readers to feel in compared to what, is not, look, I have an argument. It's this. If you compare plants, animals, and humans honestly, you start to see that identity is not a modern invention. It's not a life pattern, a survival pattern, a continuity pattern. Male and females are not merely labels. They are two ancient ways life learned to keep itself moving forward. And once you see that, you can speak with more peace. You can acknowledge the biological reality without hatred. You can acknowledge social complexity without all that chaos. You can tell the truth without being a bully. You can protect dignity without losing clarity. Because the highest intelligence is not just knowing facts. It is knowing how to hold truth in your hands without turning it into a weapon. And that is the real work.